everyone. Happy Thursday. We started part 1 and we were reading Thanksgiving on Thursday. So this will be part 2. I hope you guys enjoyed that Arthur activity, and we're just going to get right back into the story. So let's go. All right, so where we left off, Annie and Jack landed in Massachusetts, and they met some Pilgrims and Indians. So we started off on chapter 4 called We Fish. All right, so let's see what happens for Jack and Annie. There we go. All right, Annie grinned. "Good day, Squanto," she said. "Good day, Annie," said Squanto. He smiled at her and Jack. Jack was too surprised to speak. Why did Squanto say he remembers us? He wondered. Is he mistaking us for 2 other kids? Captain Standish looked surprised, too, but Governor Bradford smiled warmly. "'Tis a wonder," he said. "We welcome all the small folk sent to us. Children are a gift from God, no matter where they come from." That's a nice way of looking at things, Jack thought. Just then a boy ran up. "Chief Massasoit is here with 90 men," he shouted. The boy pointed to a long line of men walking down the path near a cornfield. Chief Massasoit walked ahead of the others. His face was painted red. He wore a fur robe and white beads. Governor Bradford, Captain Standish, and Squanto went to meet his visitors. "Mercy," a Pilgrim woman whispered. "Oh, mercy." All the Pilgrims looked worried. "Art thou afraid?" Annie asked. "Oh, no," said Priscilla. "We invited Chief Massasoit and his men to our harvest feast, but we did not expect so many. We have not prepared enough food." Governor Bradford and Squanto spoke to the chief. Then Squanto led a number of men into the woods, and the governor walked back to the Pilgrims. "The Wampanoag men will hunt more deer," he said. I know a lot of you guys hunt deer. "But we must also bring more food to the table. Priscilla, please tell the young folk what they must do." The grown-ups went back to the village as the Pilgrim kids gathered around Priscilla. She told some to carry water to set up tables. She told others to gather vegetables or hunt small animals. Once the kids were given their jobs, they rushed off to do them. Finally, only Jack, Annie, and a small girl holding a big basket were left. "Jack, would thou like to go fowling with the boys?" Priscilla asked him. She pointed to a group of boys who had just headed off with the dog. Jack stared at her in a panic. What does she mean? He wondered. "What's fowling?" Annie asked. "Thou dost not know?" said the little girl. "'Tis hunting water birds, of course." "Jack doesn't know how to do that," said Annie. "'Tis true." "How dost thou eat and live?" the little girl asked curiously. Jack froze. "We catch fish," said Annie. "We do?" thought Jack. Oh no, is he gonna catch the fish? Look, they're all walking towards there to catch the fish. "Ah, good," said Priscilla. "Then I bid thee back as many eels and clams as thou can. We have near 150 mouths to feed." That's a lot of people to feed. If families that big. Priscilla took the basket from the small girl and gave it to Annie. "We will see thee later," Priscilla said, waving. "Mary and I must go help with the cooking," said Jack. But before we could ask any questions, Priscilla and the little girl started back to the village. Oh no, they look so confused. All right. Chapter 5. Eels and Clams. All right. Jack looked at Annie. "We can't stay here," he said. "What?" she said. "We can't go home now. These Pilgrims need us to help them." "But we don't know how to do anything," Jack said. And Squanto's going to figure out he doesn't really know us, and "Don't worry so much," said Annie. "We help Mom and Dad make our Thanksgiving dinner every year, don't we? We can help the Pilgrims, but we better hurry." Clutching the big basket, she started running towards the bay. Jack sighed, then ran after her. At the rocky shore they stopped and looked around. Little waves rolled onto the short stretch of sand. The salty air felt clean and fresh. Seagulls swooped over the water. I wonder where the eels are, said Annie. And the clams. I'll look in the book, said Jack. He pulled out their book and looked up eels in the index. He turned to the right page and read aloud. Squanto showed the Pilgrims a way to catch eels. He showed them how to push the eels out of the wet sand with their bare feet, and then grab them with their hands. That sounds like a new type of fishing. That sounds fun, said Annie. She put down her basket and pulled off her shoes and stockings. She held up her long skirt with one hand, and then she walked over to the rocks and of the edge of the water. Jack put the research book into his bag. He pulled off his shoe and stockings and joined Annie. They dug their bare feet into the wet sand. I don't feel anything, said Jack. Let's wade into the water, said Annie. Together they stepped forward. Brr, said Annie. No kidding, said Jack with a shiver. He kept squishing the muddy sand with his toes. He felt pebbles and shells, then he felt something soft. Hey, I think I found one, he said. Annie splashed over to him. Where? Stand back, he said. Here. Jack squished harder with his feet, and the soft thing moved. Jack squished more. An eel slithered through the water, and Jack grabbed it with both hands. Ah! He yelled. Look at me grab the eel. Would you grab an eel? I don't know. All right. The eel was long and skinny like a snake. It felt slimy and icky. It twisted and squirmed. Annie laughed as Jack tried to hold on to it. The eel wiggled out of Jack's hand and fell against Annie. Yikes, she yelled, jumping away and bumping into Jack. With more screams, they both tumbled into the cold water. They scrambled up and splashed back to the shore. Annie was still laughing. Poor eel, she said, trying to catch her breath. We scared him half to death. Him? Said Jack. Forget eels, said Annie, her teeth chattering. What about the clams? Jack was wet and cold, but he took out the book again and looked up clams. He turned to the right page and read aloud. Squanto taught the Pilgrims how to dig for quahog clams. Quahog clams are hard-shell clams. They can live for 60 years or more. That's a long time. The oldest have been known to live for almost 100 years. Oh, forget it, Annie broke in. What? Said Jack. We can't catch them, she said. They live to be so old. We can't just end their lives. Jack sighed, and he sat down on the rock. Annie sat next to him. Their clothes were soaking wet, their feet were caked with muddy sand, and their baskets were empty. Oh, man. What other things do Pilgrim kids do to help? Said Annie. Jack opened the book again. He looked up, Pilgrim children, and he read aloud. Pilgrim children worked very hard. They built fences and cared for animals. They planted, harvested, and ground corn. They picked pumpkins, peas, and beans. They guarded the fields, they fished and hunted, they carried water, they collected the nuts, and they cooked and cleaned. They did everything they were told. They never complained about being tired. Oh my. Oh man, I feel tired just reading this. And Jack closing the book. We make lousy Pilgrim children. Yeah, I know, said Annie. Maybe we could do something like keep an eye on the turkey and tell them when it's ready. That's how I help Mom every year. Annie, Thanksgiving in Frog Creek is a whole different story from Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims, said Jack. Annie, Jack, a voice called. Jack quickly put away their book. Then they turned around. Priscilla was standing on a rock. She held a pumpkin and carried a basket filled with yellow squash and red corn. I was looking for you, she said. What do you think's gonna happen? Oh. All right, chapter 6. Good work. Good day, Priscilla, said Annie. Good day, said Priscilla. She walked to them. Did thou fill the basket with eels and clams? Not really, said Jack. The eel didn't want to get caught, said Annie. And the clams lived to be so old. We didn't think it was right to take their lives. Look at Annie being so sweet, right? Priscilla laughed. Her sad eyes sparkled. What strange children, she said. But you both look wet and cold. Would you like to come to my house and warm up by the fire? Yes, Jack and Annie said. They washed off their feet and pulled up their shoes and stockings. Jack picked up his bag. Annie picked up their empty basket. Would thou like to put some of my corn and squash in thy basket? Said Priscilla. Oh, thanks, said Annie. She took some of the corn and squash from Priscilla's basket. And perhaps thou would like to carry the pumpkin? Oh. Priscilla said to Jack. Sure, said Jack. Sure, said Priscilla. I mean, indeed, said Jack. He felt relieved. Now they wouldn't have to go back empty-handed. Jack wrapped his arms around the heavy pumpkin. Annie carried the basket, and they followed Priscilla back to the village. The Pilgrims and the Wampanoags were gathering in the wide dirt street. Women were baking bread in an outdoor oven, and some boys were setting wooden planks on barrels to make tables. Mary, the little girl, was carrying a bucket of water. Oh, she's so cute. Squanto sat smoking a pipe with Chief Massaoit, Governor Bradford, and Captain Standish. Let's see. Jack hoped Mary wouldn't ask him about the clams and eels. He hoped Squanto wouldn't ask him about Captain John Smith. He hoped the governor and captain wouldn't ask him about home. Jack hid his face behind the fat pumpkin. Priscilla opened the door to a small house, and then she led Jack and Annie into a dark, smoky room. The only light that came from one window and a fire. Sit by the hearth, said Priscilla, so your clothes can dry. Where's the hearth? Annie asked, looking around. Priscilla laughed again, shaking her head. There where the fire lies, she said. Jack put down the pumpkin in his bag. Annie put down her basket. The hearth was so large, Jack could have stood in it. A hearth is like the beginning part of like a fireplace, if you guys are just wondering. All right. He and Annie got as close as they could to the warm, crackling fire. Several pots hung over the fire. Near the pots, a turkey was roasting on an iron rod. The Thanksgiving turkey, whispered Annie. Cool, said Jack. The very first Thanksgiving turkey, he thought. That would be so cool to see that first Thanksgiving. I don't know if they actually had turkey. They probably had fish, but you know. Would thou please stir the corn pudding whilst thou art drying? Asked Priscilla. She pointed to one of the pots. Indeed, said Jack. I love how Jack is catching on. He knows the lingo now. Priscilla took a wooden spoon out of a jug of water near the hearth. She gave it to Jack, and he put it into the thick, bubbling pudding and stirred. Look at him. You see him putting it and stirring the pudding? Pudding. I must gather nuts, said Priscilla. Whilst I'm gone, move to the roots, close to the ashes, and stir herbs into the seafood chowder. Indeed, said Annie. After Priscilla left, Annie looked at Jack. What are roots and herbs? She asked. Look in the book, said Jack. Annie took the research book from Jack's bag. She looked up roots and read aloud. The Pilgrims called certain vegetables roots. These vegetables such as carrots and turnips grow under the ground. Ah, said Jack. He picked up some carrots and turnips near the hearth and moved them close to the hot ashes. Next, Annie looked up herbs. She read aloud. The Pilgrims called leafy vegetables that grow above the ground herbs. They made salads with herbs. They used dried herbs to flavor soups and seafood chowders. Jack saw some dried plants hanging from the rafters. Those must be the herbs, he said. Annie broke off a leaf and sniffed it. That smells good, she said. She leaned close to one of the pots. And that must be the seafood chowder. It smells like the ocean. She crumbled the leaf into the chowder, and she took another spoon from the jug of water. She and Jack both stirred pots. Good work, Priscilla said as she stepped back into the room. Jack smiled. The fire had made him hot and sweaty. The smoke burned his eyes, but he didn't mind. Finally, he felt useful. Priscilla put some walnuts close to the fire. Squanto taught us which nuts are good to eat, she said. Squanto taught thee a lot, said Annie. He saved our lives, Priscilla said quietly. Last winter we were cold and hungry, and half of our people died. Annie gasped. How? She said. Sickness, said Priscilla. Fever took my mother, my father, and my brother. Her eyes were bright with tears. This hits too close with everything. No one spoke. The sound of crackling fire filled the room. Then Annie put her arms around Priscilla. We're so sorry, said Annie. Yes, we are, said Jack. Thank you, Priscilla said, with a sad smile. 'Twas a terrible winter, but we never gave up hope. And now, God be praised, we have had a good harvest, and we have peace with our neighbors. Oh, I like that. In the glow of the firelight, Priscilla was beautiful, Jack thought. Not only was she kind, but she was incredibly brave as well. Come, she said. She wiped her eyes and stood up. Something special is about to take place. Would thou like to watch? Sure, indeed, said Annie. She and Jack jumped up and followed Priscilla outside. All right, so in our next part, we'll finish the book with the last few chapters, but this will be part 2, and I will see you guys in the next part. I'll probably post the last part on Monday, and then we'll just have Tuesday, and then it'll be you'll be off for Thanksgiving break. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 3. Bye. Have a good Thursday.